What a treat it is to have back on the podcast today Coy Moorfield, the founder of the Lab School of Memphis, a microschool in Memphis, Tennessee, and the founder of a new organization called Microschool Masters. We're going to hear all about that program today, offering professional development for microschool teachers, for the teachers who are working in these emerging schooling models. But first, a little bit of background about Coy. She's a former public school teacher who worked in both the Chicago public schools and the Memphis public schools. She also left education for a bit to get an MBA and then kind of came back to bring together her passion for education and business as an education entrepreneur, launching the Lab School of Memphis in 2021. And now, of course, this new endeavor. So, Coy Moorfield, welcome back to the Liberated podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
It's so great to have you back. I'm always so inspired whenever we are able to meet at conferences and events by the incredible work that you're doing. So much success with the Lab School of Memphis. Really, it is a model for other microschool founders to follow. And you also realized that there was a need within sort of the microschooling movement to provide more support and professional development resources for the teachers who are working in these micro schools, especially as they expand, many of these teachers coming from conventional backgrounds and maybe needing some support when it comes to thinking about a new way of approaching teaching and learning. And so you're filling that gap, which I'm excited to hear more about. But first, I'd love to just have a little update about what's happening with the Lab School of Memphis. You're in year 4 now of running the micro school, and it's highly successful. If you tell us a little bit about what's happening there.
Okay. So, yes, the Lab School of Memphis, we are still here and growing and are now serving 70 learners in Memphis on with satellite studios as well as our original campus, pre-K through eighth, or I'm sorry, pre-K through ninth. So we are super excited about that growth and still project-based and experience-based learning, still providing that personalized support through one-on-one and small group instruction, and super excited to sort of manage to stick around and hopefully offer somewhat of a if not a blueprint, at least a frame of reference for other founders.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much to love about the Lab School of Memphis. One of the things I think is really great about it is that you're a state recognized private school in the state of Tennessee, but you also serve homeschoolers and have some homeschooling programs as well. So, really kind of meeting the needs of your community in a variety of different ways and different programming and scheduling options. So, sort of that flexibility of microschooling seems to be one of its strengths. I don't know if that's what you found as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially in serving our homeschool families, I think that we, in some spaces, particularly still here in the Memphis area, overlook how many families really have a desire to homeschool and take more ownership of their children's education, but are a little unsure of how to do that, maybe even a bit insecure. So, the wave of relief that comes over families' faces when it's like, no, you really can do this and we can support you because we can be that partner, that touchstone to help provide structure to that. So it really has been quite liberating, really. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's so great. It's lovely when families say, "Oh, you mean I actually make homeschooling work. I can have sort of the best of homeschooling and family involvement in education and have that structure and support of a micro school, and especially with your leadership there at the Lab School of Memphis." So great to see your work and your growth in a very short period of time with your program. And it was part of that growth that I understand is what led you to realize there was more more of a need in the market and the microschooling space for professional development for teachers working in these programs. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about the origin story for Microschool Masters. When did you have this brilliant idea?
The origin story is a little bit of a scary story. So I found myself building a team to meet the needs or the demand of our growth. And through our second year, I was quite present physically and was really able to provide real-time coaching and ongoing one-on-one support for teachers, not just in instruction, because many of them had a background in education, but really in acclimating them to the model and the mindset, right? These innovative environments, it's not just about not physically looking like a conventional school, but it's really also about taking a different frame of mind, right? Reimagining the power dynamics and, really shedding that ego that often we see in more conventional classrooms, learning to trust learners, right? Like all of those things are a muscle that has to be developed. And the first couple of years, I was present and really able to provide that. As our team started to grow, the demands on my time increased because I'm also the rainmaker and make sure that we have funding to keep going. But also there were just more educators, right? More than I had always had a capacity to support, especially on the front end. So unfortunately, what I found is after year three, all of my new hires, those contracts were not renewed. And I don't blame them, quite honestly, as is my approach as a leader. I looked at me, what's different? What has changed? Why is it that Sarah, my very first hire, is still with us working remotely from California and is, I jokingly say, more lab school than I am? She is through and through. Yet these people who came to our team later um, are not necessarily embodying the culture and the vision in that way. And I felt as though a lot of it had to do with the way in which I was onboarding and training these educators or these individuals who came into our environment. And that's when I realized, wow, I've really got to shore up our training and onboarding systems and content. Like, what does that look like? And that was probably when it was born. So that was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, and then you realized that other microschool founders were experiencing similar challenges, that it wasn't just you. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what made you think, gosh, there's a need for this. I know we talked before we started recording, there's thankfully a lot more microschool accelerator programs, incubator programs helping founders get started with a new school. But there maybe isn't as much in sort of the staff development piece. Once you're running a program, how do you do that development piece with new hires, especially teachers who may be coming from a conventional classroom? So when did you think, gosh, I think that there's a real need for this?
I think when I started getting calls
Hmm.
from my fellow founders saying, I cannot do this. I have to hire someone, and I don't even know where to start because how do I create another me? And I started getting calls from, okay, I have this person that I've hired, and they're not doing it right. And what do I do about that? And I realized, wow, okay, there really is something here because we understand, or I think for some time, there's been an assumption that we bring someone in, it doesn't work out, and then we just let them go. But the cost of that, I think we severely underestimate. We think that it just costs the $20 an hour that we were paying them, and it costs the reposting the position, but really it costs far more than that when we look at having someone to cover the classes that they were in and the time that you are spending interviewing. So what is so important is being guided to bring in the right humans, being
Mm.
guided toward the humans with the right heart, but then also having something real in place to support them as they acclimate to this space. The learning curve, it's so steep, it's like a ladder, I say. And so, what can you provide? Like, what are the rungs on that ladder look like? In terms of just basic onboarding, having someone come in and we say, hey, I'm going to sit you in front of this course with this fellow founder whom I trust that their perspective and that the mindset and the model is aligned enough with ours that this can be, at the very least, a foundation. Spend a couple of hours on this course and then let's debrief and talk. I think that's something we were looking
Absolutely.
for.
Ah, I just love that. You know, I think one of the great success indicators of today's microschooling movement and all of these new schools and spaces that are emerging across the country are that more and more teachers in conventional classrooms are looking to work in these new schools and spaces. I talk to founders, I'm sure you've talked to even more, who, might post a job for a teacher on indeed.com or some other kind of recruiting website. And they are often pleasantly surprised when they receive hundreds of applications, the majority of which are from current school teachers, public school teachers working in the system who want something new and different. I wonder if you could talk a little bit before we get into the staff development piece on the recruiting end. What are you seeing both in terms of your experience running a microschool and then working with founders running microschools and recruiting teachers? What is happening that is encouraging teachers to want to join microschools? Why do they find this to be an attractive alternative to a traditional classroom?
I think what is making micro schools an attractive alternative is number one, I think educators who are passionate about young people and about education are looking for a way to do it with less stress, with less pressure. I think that they are looking to have some of the requirements and demands of larger systems addressed while still being able to do what it is they love. So I think the smaller class sizes. So, you maybe there's a 23-to-1 student to teacher ratio in an average traditional classroom. And for a micro school, maybe that's a 6-to-1 or an 8-to-1. There is inherently like this burden kind of lifted in the structure. And I think that is one of the things that they are attracted to. I think there is also an attraction really to this growing movement. I am seeing a lot of teachers exploring opportunities with micro schools because they would like to open a micro school. And I will say, I love that. I think that's fantastic. I am so about having someone come in who has a desire to open a micro school and working with them and offering the coaching and support and helping them to learn the way that we kind of do things so that they can then go and start their own. Like, I embrace being a pit stop on that journey. I think that's really fantastic, and I wish I had had that opportunity. But I will say that that is where the training becomes essential, right? Because and is far better than any traditional or conventional professional development from a large district, right? Because at a micro school, I'm training teachers around parent communication and creating curriculum and procedures. Like, I'm training them essentially as many versions of me. So the entrepreneurial mindset that's essential. Every educator in our buildings has to have that. So, what better foundation to then take and launch your own. So I think that's what's making it really attractive.
So great. Yeah, you talked about learning how to interact with parents, learning how to write curriculum. Those are some of the things that might attract teachers working in conventional systems to be interested in an alternative, being part of something new and different, and having more of that curriculum autonomy and more of that ability to shape a classroom, potentially even going off on their own and being entrepreneurs. I imagine, though, that there is a lot of sort of unlearning or deschooling that must occur from some of these teachers. They are excited about a new way of approaching education, but they may have developed habits and mindsets in a conventional classroom that don't fit so great in one of these new schools or spaces. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I have seen some outstanding educators come through the doors of the lab school in terms of like pedagogy, like outstanding. But what you are saying, those more traditional or those kind of public school mindsets and attitudes and strategies, especially around discipline, like that takes some real unlearning. And I found myself really offering a survey. I surveyed educators and said, when you came into this environment, what do you wish you had known? What kind of training do you wish that you had had? And so the feedback I got, even around learner-centered practices, just the idea of education or the relationship between educator and learner being a partnership versus a dynamic where the educator is doing all of the telling and the learner is sitting and getting, just like supporting around that, or even nature based or experience based, how to turn the world into a classroom. Like that's the feedback that I was getting around, what it really takes to do well. And I found that people were flailing not because of a lack of desire or skill set as a teacher, but really in how to reconcile that with all of the baggage that had come from being in more traditional systems.
Yeah, just this different dynamic in these smaller, more personalized learning environments when you don't have sort of those top-down bureaucratic pressures that you might find in a conventional system. It's freeing, but sometimes it could be a little bit intimidating. And so just being able to have someone like you guide teachers through this new schooling model could be extremely effective. So, how does it work in practice, Coy? Let's say that I'm a microschool founder and I want to grow and continue to hire new teachers. What would I do? How would I work with microschool masters? And in what ways would you work with me as a microschool founder?
Okay, so micro school masters is all about being realistic. So think master class, as in no, the master class that like Mark Cuban was featured on, and I think Wolfgang Puck or whomever. So think master class, but for teachers in these innovative learning environments. So it is a library of online courses that can be taken at any rate, because again, we're learner centered, right? So self-paced, easily digestible. The courses are broken down into models. Courses are anywhere from 40 minutes to 60 minutes in length, and you can kind of take it in quick bites or all at once. But with access to the platform, the Microschool Masters platform, you have access to all of the courses and can decide what you need or what you need now and what you want to skip. I love the approach of take what you need and leave the rest. And I don't believe in wasting anyone's time. One of my team members always says that about me, and it means so much to me that she says, I love that you don't waste our time, even when we're doing professional development in person. So with membership to Microschool Masters, that membership gets you access to every course for the entire year, every new course that's added for the entire year, and you have lifetime access to any courses that were available or made available during your that 1 year period of your membership. So I'm really trying to give it legs, and any updates that are made, you have access to that. This isn't about trying to sell and resell. It really is about building out a robust library of courses that you can set your people in front of, whether they are a brand new hire or whether they are poised to go off and launch a satellite. Whatever it is, you can set them in front of it and offer them something real that is worth their while and aligned with the way that you do school.
Oh, I love it. And I imagine it takes some of the pressure off, right? That founders, you're wearing so many hats as a microschool founder, teacher, entrepreneur, guidance counselor, curriculum developer, all of these things, facilities maintenance, everything. And professional development can, obviously take up a huge amount of time for founders. So I imagine this is like having you in the classroom with some of these teachers to just take a little bit of that pressure off. Is that your intent, and is that what you're finding?
Absolutely. It gives you a great place to start. So, for example, one of our courses is on, going from a practitioner to a partner, just the tenets of learner-centered
Mm.
education, right? And so it is a great place to start in your one-on-ones. If you're doing weekly huddles or weekly team meetings, it is something that you can assign and say, take a look at this, or take a look at the first two modules, complete the reflection questions, and then let's debrief about it. So it even gives you something that is relevant that you can then take and make your own.
Mm.
Each of the courses comes with a workbook, and that includes prompts, and that includes exercises. So all of that can be taken into your in-person guidance and coaching and tailored to your environment. So it absolutely takes the pressure off. It takes the pressure off, in the summer when you say, okay, the week before school starts, we're going to do professional development. And it's like, well, where do we start and what do we do? And this offers you an opportunity to really tailor that too, based on where your team members are in their journey, and where they have come to you. So it is always my goal. How do I make things easier for both myself, but also for my counterparts?
Right. Of course, that's the nature of a true entrepreneur is you're solving problems in your everyday life and able to then share that wisdom with others. I think that that's something you do particularly well, and it's encouraging to see. So, Microschool Masters is really, a wonderful training and development tool for teachers working in these emerging schools. What about sort of the other pieces of HR, of human resources? Is this something you've thought about? Maybe this will be sort of next on your agenda, but things around how do you recruit and hire the right people who will be successful in your program? How do you do kind of performance evaluations around these folks? Do you get into that at all with Microschool Masters? Is that maybe coming next? I can imagine that this could become a whole human resources suite of offerings for founders.
Yes, I have definitely thought about that because a lot of those things that you mentioned are more geared towards founders. It is not currently a part of the offerings because this is more so the instructional team, but I do see a need for that. And I have considered ways in which I might, if not offering a course, certainly tools, because
Mm.
I do weekly one-on-ones with my team members and other leadership members do one-on-one. So kind of talking through what those look like and what we accomplish, I've certainly thought of that. And, there are some, I mean, this kind of toes the line between training and HR, but this spring, a group of courses that we are adding will be around those sort of more regulatory requirements. So
Mhm.
data privacy, sexual harassment, abuse and neglect reporting, first aid, the sorts of things that people working with children really need and you
Yeah.
really want them to have, even just for your own protection, should um, something undesirable occur, you want to be able to demonstrate that you have taken proactive steps to provide relevant training, right? But it would cost me what, $100 a piece to send each of my team members to a course for these. So we will integrate things like that, that, like I said, kind of toe that line with HR because of the compliance
Yeah.
aspect of it. And so being able to introduce those, I think will certainly support a lot of that work if
Oh,
we're talking
yeah.
about practical. Mhm.
Yeah, so it's not only compliance training, but also sort of individual professional development. I think that that's really a great add-on that's coming down the way. So, maybe this is based on your experience and also when you're working with other founders. Are there things that founders should be looking for in the hiring process so that it may be easier on the training side, right? Like if there's certain qualities, certain skills, certain mindsets that founders are recruiting for right out of the gate, it makes that training and professional development step a little bit easier. Do you have any thoughts on that? What should founders be looking for when recruiting staff?
Wow, that is
The
a
$1 million question.
question. I know, question. I One of the things that I say, and that holds true for me, is I really hire for heart. I look at the individual, who the person is. I tend to date the people that I hire, meaning it takes us a while. They have at least 3 interviews with 3 different people in 3 different places. I usually interview at a restaurant or I interview at a coffee shop, not just because I'm trying to throw anyone off balance, but honestly, Kerry, because I want to know how you treat the wait staff at a restaurant. I want to know how you interact with the hostess when you have to wait longer than you expected. I want to know how you are who you are in the world because that's going to tell me a lot about like the inside, the things that you don't say in an interview. I have an opportunity to look at very small things. I will say I have enough training and experience as an instructional coach. I can teach anyone to teach, right? I can teach you how to teach. I cannot teach you how to honor and respect a young person in the same way that you demand honor and respect from me. I cannot one of our guardrails at the lab school is take care of each other, and it is challenging to teach someone what it means to really take care of each other, to consider the impact of your decisions beyond just you. So I would say you really want to look for what aligns to who you are. So my school, again, take care of each other, speak kindness, encouragement, and truth, and keeping our spaces sacred. So when we're interviewing and we go out and we're having a meal, I can tell just by, what do you leave, on the table? Have you made an attempt when you spill something? Do you call someone over or do you make an attempt to, these like small things. Like, do you make an attempt to clean it up or do you just kind of call someone over and step back? It
Mm.
seems like it doesn't matter, but people are always, always, always introducing us to who they are and reintroducing us, if we're looking closely enough outside of just the classroom.
It's almost like thinking about your own values, your own vision for your microschool. What are some of the ways in which you move about the space and interact with people of all ages, and then being able to watch for that in the interviewing process. And I think it's so interesting that you take recruits out of sort of an office setting or a classroom setting into a coffee shop or some more organic space and really see how they interact with the world. That's just such a great tip that I hope others will consider. So, Coy, as we think about the future of the microschooling movement over, the next, say, 5 years, what do you see? And I guess I'll preface this by saying, you've already grown from a handful of kids with your microschool in 2021 to now, I think you said over 70 students. So clearly there's growth within many of these microschools at the individual level, and then more and more microschools sprouting organically all across the US. What is your sense of where the movement will be over the next 5 years?
Um, I think we will continue to see growth. I think that we will continue to see micro schools kind of springing up, both through these incredible accelerator programs that my colleagues are running, but also just kind of organic responses to the need in communities. But I will say, I also think that without intentionality behind developing the teams and the people that truly make these spaces work, we will see a growth ceiling. I
Yeah.
do believe that founders will become the bottleneck that impedes the growth not only of their individual sites, but also the movement as a whole. If we are not being very intentional about equipping because honestly that is who is powering these micro schools. Yes, it takes founders that have vision and can plant that seed, but once it is planted, it really is the people who are in front of learners and in front of families every day they're the momentum behind it.
Yeah, I think you're totally right there. That we're sort of at this maturation stage of microschooling and the movement as a whole. And as part of that maturation, we need to have, more of these sort of administrative tools and strategies to really help founders avoid some of the pitfalls that they may encounter, especially as they're growing. If they do want to sort of remain one founder and 12 students and they're happy and content doing that, then that's fine. But if they do want to grow and they want to add on more staff and potentially open new locations, then having some of these development resources, I think, is going to be really key for them.
And Carrie, you mentioned, if I might say, you mentioned if you're just kind of one founder and you're
Yeah.
happy, but I would challenge even those kind of single founder, single educator models. I would challenge them even to consider the volunteers, the person who's working
Mhm.
at the desk or answering the phone. If there are mentors coming in from the community, like these
Yeah.
are sacred spaces. These spaces have been curated with such care that I really do challenge founders to consider how they're preparing any human being to engage in that environment. And I have, some of the micro school master's courses will absolutely be some that we share with our industry mentors who do internships for our learners so that they are better equipped to engage in a way that aligns with who we are. So whether you are, a one person shop and want to stay that way, I do think that we have to consider everyone who's entering that environment and kind of establishing the norms by which they engage.
Oh, such a good point. Yeah, parent volunteers and, like you said, community mentors, making sure to preserve the space that you as a founder have painstakingly created and making sure to preserve that culture, I think is really important. I'm glad that you brought that up, Coy. So, if my listeners and viewers are sold on this idea that they realize this is absolutely what they need to be more successful and to free themselves up to do, some of the other founding work that's so important, what is the best way for them to connect with Microschool Masters? How do they sign up? How does this whole thing work?
Yes, so microschoolmasters.com is the website. That is how they can enroll. I will say that enrollment is not ongoing. There is an
Mm,
enrollment period that will open for a couple of weeks and then will close, and then will open again later. The purpose behind that is really to allow us to spend time on content. It needs to be excellent. It needs to be very high quality. The production is done on a studio, so in a studio with professional production.
mm,
So that takes time. And in order to make sure that we have the time to develop really quality content, it is an ongoing enrollment. But microschoolmasters.com is how they can do that. Reach out to me at contact@microschoolmasters.com. I would love to hear what the needs are. That's the beautiful thing about something new, right? Is I'm able to create things based on what I'm hearing and what the needs are. So I'm really excited about that. So yes, I would love to hear all of the things, all of the information, help me build something that helps all of us.
Oh, so exciting. I love that the Lab School of Memphis is doing so well and that now you are helping to equip other microschool founders to make sure that their programs are as successful as possible through Microschool Masters. So, looking forward to continuing to follow your entrepreneurial pursuits. Coy Moorfield, thank you so much for being on the LiberatED podcast again.
Thank you so much for having me.